will talk today about diverse spiritual meanings, multicultural approach to human spiritual experience. I am from Brazil, and I've been living in the U.S. For 3 years now. And hello. And since I arrived in the U.S., my interest in multicultural issues have been increased, and I've been learning more and more about it, and also, of course, in my own experiences. I am a member of the Milton Erickson Foundation, and I'm director of one Milton Erickson Institute in Brazil. And my area of expertise is brief therapy. And I used to train therapists and in Brazil in brief therapy, especially in Ericksonian therapy. I have some guidelines here for my presentation today, and I like this quotation very much from this book, Why Religion Matters, from Houston Smith. And he says, modernization of the world is accompanied by a spiritual malaise that has come to be called alienation. At its most fundamental level, the diagnosis is based on the view that modernization forces upon us a world that, although baptized as real by science, is denied of all humanly recognizable qualities: beauty and ugliness, love and hate, passion and fulfillment, salvation and damnation. It is not, of course, being claimed that such matters are not part of the existential realities of human lives. It's just rather that the scientific worldview makes it illegitimate to speak of them as being objectively part of the world, forcing us instead to define such evaluation and such emotional experience as merely subjective projections of people's inner lives. I just love this quote. Isn't it beautiful? And before coming here, I was rushing with my, preparation to travel. And I was in a car, and my next door neighbor came, and he is from former Yugoslavia, and he was showing me a piece of roof. And I live in Phoenix, Arizona right now, and this is the storm season, monsoon season. And so he was showing me the strength of the winds that we are having lately. And then he was saying, about also some deaths and some catastrophes that we had around the world. And I did this. At this moment, he held my hand and he said, "You know that I do that all the time. This is what we need in this world." So his tone of voice just deepened, and we had a more intimate connection in that moment. So spiritual beliefs and religions has such a deep influence on us. But funny, we don't use that as much in our therapeutic relationship. Actually, when I studied in Brazil, you could not use it. Religion was one thing and science was another thing. You don't mix them. But nowadays, there is a growing interest on spirituality and growing interest in religions in America, and also from psychological associations, and they're claiming that we need to use that and need to understand that across cultures so we can understand better people and help them better. So, okay, this is from the National Multicultural Conference and Summit in the USA, and one of the co-sponsors was American Psychological Association. And this is a brief paragraph of that summit. Psychology must break away from being a unidimensional science that must recognize the multifaceted layers of existence. That spirituality and meaning in life are important, and that psychology must balance its reductionistic tendencies with the knowledge that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, understanding that people are cultural and spiritual beings as a necessary condition for psychology of human existence. So psychology is having a more focus on spirituality and religion nowadays. As I said, I have a lot of materials and I don't expect to cover everything today. I'm just picking some things that are more interesting for you in this topic today. And why is it important to bring spirituality to psychotherapy? Spirituality brings some values, including meaning and purpose in life, a sense of mission and goals, awareness of the sacred, helping others, striving to make the world better, and etc. Spirituality also includes living and behaving in ways that are consistent with these values. Sometimes, even when people lack spirituality, I can come with some good values that will help or might help people with their struggles in life. So I do not have a scission in my values and in my personality, professional personality. So I go to see my patients with my values and my spiritual beliefs as well, and I truly believe that they help them. And it's different from imposing them, right? Spirituality and religion are grounded in a reality that is clearly outside the boundaries of the empirical, perceived, and material world. Okay, multicultural approach. Cultural differences and similarities are based on individuals' membership in defined identity groups as such gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, national origin, able-embodiedness, religion, and class. So if we want to understand people, especially in a world as we have today, with the immigration changing the shape and the face of the cultures and the countries, and the closeness that we have with other cultures and access we have with other cultures with our technologies and emails and internet, we need to understand their background as gender, sexual orientation, national of origin, and everything, but not in a stereotypical way, like, okay, this person is a Latino and he's from, she's from Brazil, so she must be Catholic and she must believes in spirits. No. When we understand their different cultures and we understand their different backgrounds and we understand ours also, we can be more curious and open and flexible for people's uniqueness and individuality. So that is why it's important for us to know all the other cultures, or other spiritual beliefs and religions, because this is truly part of who we are, our traditions, values, and worldview. And as we do that, we have a better scope to understand them, not that we are going to impose them. So, and also, we know that the spiritual and religious beliefs are practices are common to humanity and are connected to how people view health, how sickness are created, and how we can heal in most cultures of the world. Right? So in many cultures, spirituality is a central piece in their worldview, right? So for instance, a boy who has seizures in some Asian cultures, they believe that the spirit catches them and they fall on the floor. So it's completely different from what we believe. So if a doctor goes to this kind of client with this worldview, he cannot impose them, or the treatment will fail completely. So we have to share a worldview. So as I said, immigration and the rapid changes in demographics have contributed to growth in different patterns of religious practice all over the world. Okay, so we have to understand that as our identity is diverse, our spiritual and religious identity is also diverse. So, for instance, in Brazil, so it's interesting, for instance, in Japan, if you ask people if they are Buddhist, more than 90% of the population would say that they are Buddhists. If you ask if they are Catholics, more than 90% of the population will say that yes, they are Catholic. If you ask them if they are Shintoist, more than 90% of the population say yes. So they have, it's different from the US. If you are Catholic, and you go to that church, you do not go to other churches. But some cultures, they incorporate other religions. They know that God is one, and they have different ways of reaching them, or reaching God. And one way doesn't contradict the other. They're just holistic and they can integrate them. So we have to have that in mind also. When so I just brought a profile of Canada and how many how many religions we have here in Canada. So 82% of the population belongs to Christian denominations. Roman Catholics are 45%. Protestants are 36%. Other religions may include Jewish, Muslims, Buddhists, Hinduists, and Sikhs, and other religions. And I understand that the immigration and the changes in the population changes this profile also. Not only here, this is only an example. I sometimes make a joke that in the US you find everything except Americans. 40% of the population in Arizona is Latino. And there are people, the woman that works for us cleaning the house, she lives 13 years now in Arizona. She doesn't speak English. One word. She can't speak and understand English. So I'm gonna bring some. So we cannot understand all or be experts in all religions and all cultures. So I brought some examples so we can have start to broaden our worldview, our view of other cultures and see how, when we see the difference, we can see ourselves better. And only when we see differences, we can see ourselves better. In our culture, we don't see how we are affected and how addicted we are to cultural habits. Only when we are outside and we see the difference, we see how we are. So other people, or different people, are just mirrors to who we are. So let's see a little bit of other cultures, and I brought Asian, Native Americans, and Latino, which for you might be different. For me, it's just part of who I am. But let's talk a little bit about Asian population. So Eastern medicine differs greatly from the Western medicine. In Western medicine, which is allopathic, we treat sickness with its opposite. So if a person has asthma, we give a medicine so they dilate their bronchial area. But the mentality in Asian, especially in Chinese medicine, is holistic, and it requires an understanding of the energy system in the body. So they have a whole system, and to understand how the energy flows in the body and how it gets blocked. So they try to figure out how the yin-yang energy is inside of you, and the four elements are also the five elements are also represent the energy flow in the body: wood, fire, metal, earth, and water. So, and they see diseases as unbalanced of those energy in the body, and the congruence between mind and body and spirit. So both external, environmental, and climatic factors and food can affect, and also internal factors like emotions and tension can affect our health. So too much anger affects the liver, or too much fear affects the kidneys. Or women should not walk with barefoot because the cold will go to their ovaries in the sexual areas. So they have a whole different system to see how to check and see how the health is in our bodies. Also, spirit possessions or soul loss is believed to be a cause of folk illnesses. And they have shamans, and they have some Chinese medicine doctors would treat for spirit possessions. So they would believe that the bad spirits would influence people. In a lot of Chinese houses, you would see some charms and some things in front of the door to get rid of the bad, the evil spirits. So for some Asian cultures, spiritual beliefs are central to that worldview. As I said about the seizures. If someone is having a seizure, they think that, they believe that the spirits go and catch you and we fall down. It's a hierarchical society, so they will value a lot the expertise of the therapist. They will be more open to a direct approach. So they will expect you to give advice, not because they are dependent, but because they have this hierarchical mentality. They are group oriented, so they are not only concerned to their individuality, but the interest of the group and the family will be very important. And sometimes it's necessary to bring the family or the larger group for the treatment, because that will be very influential and very good for to solve the problem. And the treatment needs to be solution focused. They need, they value more to have long-term goals as well as small short-term goals for therapy. So let's talk a little bit about Native American population. Again, I don't want to, I'm just talking a little bit about differences. There's a lot. I just took a course in multicultural issues that was just a whole semester about this, and I felt after I finished it was just beginning. So 1 hour is, so I'm just giving some examples. And about the Native American population, we need to understand that the notion of time, the social distance, or social cues, the non-verbal behavior, and the value of the context or language are culturally based. So, for instance, for Native Americans, this notion of time and that we are hurrying up for everything, it doesn't exist for them. So I have I know a psychologist, and he says, whenever I know that I'm treating a Native American, I put them at the end of the day, because they do not care about time. So if you put them at 8 o'clock in the morning, they know that they have that appointment for that day, and they will come. They are not so attached to time. So he puts them to, by the end of the day, so they will come and they don't mind waiting. So, and he will take as much time as he needs, and they will not, mess up his schedule. So his notion, their notion of times are much more related to seasons and much more related to the earth than our watch time. So there are more, and I said that because, to introduce some common values and worldview of the Native American, but there are more than 550 federally recognized nations in North America, and indigenous tribes are diverse. We cannot assume that spirituality is a homogeneous phenomenon among Native people. But the common values and dimensions that have been described include qualities of humility, respect for all, awareness of beauty in everyday life, acceptance, living in harmony with nature, caretaking, realized connection with all living things, respect for elders, and living one's life purpose. They have this notion of a circle of life. And symbolically, the circle represents the life process or the cycles, and promote the most sacred dimensions of life. So life for them is sacred, and shows the sacred relationship we have to all living beings, to life itself. So it's connected to earth and to Mother Nature. And there is a profound respect for Mother Nature and how we use them. The holy man, no, illness or mental problem happen as a result of loss of harmony with life processes or being out of step with the universe. So we are in harmony with ourselves, with our folks. We are equal and with Earth and the universe. So disease happens when we are not in balance with at least one of them. So as a therapist, when we are treating or dealing with them, we need to find where is the imbalance in their lives. Do we need to help them to connect with the wholeness or with the universe or with his own people, or feeling proud of being an American because after the genocide and how Native Americans are treated, they sometimes get ashamed of being Native Americans? So we need to see where the disconnection is. The holy man or shaman uses healing plants, herbs, manipulation, and sweat bath as curative agents. And the holy men and women are prophets, soothsayers, moral leaders, and healers in their tribes. So they have a huge role in their tribes. As Native Americans conceive of healings, it takes place through divine power, and healing agents may take the form of supernatural charms, and the act of cure is usually accomplished with song, ceremony, and prayers. So as a non-Native American or mental health professionals, doesn't need to be American, but any non-native, we need to be sensitive to those values and beliefs, and not try to adapt those native healings to our practice, but try to see when it's advisable to ask them to look for their own shamans in their own community for other ways of healing. And also, we can use more creative interventions, including techniques that incorporate arts, music, poetry, nonverbal means, as dream work or guided imagery. Those things are culturally congruent with Native healings. And I know about a AA treatment for Native Americans who uses the animal powers and their symbols in a 12-step program of AA meetings. It's very interesting because we know that a huge problem for Native Americans is alcoholism and diabetes, and so adapting the AA treatment for this population using their own symbols is very good and very powerful. So after I said that, I think I want to start talking and just giving some examples about how we can utilize spirituality in our practice. I'm going to give some examples of my own practice, but I'm going to bring some thinking about how we can use spirituality in healthcare in our profession. So we need to understand our own background and biases and stereotype in regard to different religious and ethnical groups. For instance, how do you see death in abortion? If a girl comes to you and say that she's going to do an abortion and she's 15, how do you stand in front of that? If a client comes to you and say, I'm suffering, I have cancer, it's terminal, I want to terminate my life, and share that with you? What is your stand in front of that? For sex, for instance, a person who is having extramarital sex or affairs, or divorce. Many people would not divorce because they have spiritual or religious beliefs. And how do you stand in front of that? So it's important to understand our own background and biases, and where are we coming from, and how it can affect our clients in our practice. Understand that some cultural frameworks and structures studied may not fit the reality of our client. For example, some psychological constructs, such as depression, may not be shared across cultures. We may name something as depression, but a Latino can name it as susto. So she's just stressed. Or mal de nervios. Someone is just nervous. And we need to understand the meaning of spirituality and religion for our clients. Because sometimes spirituality can be a cause of problems. Or how Jung used to say that we can use a religion as a way of reaching God or running away from it. Or reaching ourselves or running away from it. So, yeah. So religious and spiritual beliefs and practices may be expressed in both functional and dysfunctional ways. For instance, a woman in a very bad relationship with an abusive man would not divorce because of her religious beliefs. So discern in which ways the spirituality and or and or religion is part of the problem and or part of the solution. So if the spirituality or religion is part of the problem, we can use that as part of the solution too. And I will give an example of that specific one. Some people may want to use spirituality or religion to bypass psychological issues that may be necessary for them to address. So sometimes it's easy for us just to say, okay, that person just hurt me and I will just forgive because it's my duty as a Catholic. Instead of just going through the dealing with the hurt and see how is it affecting our life and their life. And so certain issues include spirituality as a more direct component. Yeah, so sometimes we would face some issues in our practice that is more, that spirituality and religion will be more a part of it, as a meaning of life, death, the meaning of marriage, the purpose of life. So sometimes we need to have a spiritual, or our values need to be checked to be used. I'll talk about that if I have time. Okay, so the use of spirituality in psychotherapy. So people make meaning through symbolic communication. So we need to understand what is the model of the client in regard of this, her or his problem. So an anthropologist would see psychotherapy, Western psychotherapy, as one way of healing. And he would see, there are other ways of healing too. So a shaman will have his own way of healing, their community, his community. And it's not better, neither worse than a psychotherapy. It's just a different way. So how healing happens if we have so many diverse ways of healing people? So why psychotherapy and a shamanic ritual work? What is the common points? So healing is achieved by changing the symbolic meaning, transformation of the experience, catharsis, and restructured social relationships. I'm going to give you one example. I treated a boy in Brazil, and he was 12 years old. And his aunt used to be my client, and she called me one day, desperate, saying that her nephew was hearing voices, and they needed me to see him right away. So I set an appointment with them, and they came, the boy, the mother, and the aunt, who used to be my client. So this is my practice, to bring as much people as I can to help. So I brought everybody in, and I asked questions about the problem. And I discovered the boy was hearing voices. The voices were saying that they were going to catch him, and he was very afraid. I found out that the mother and the father, his mother and father, just divorced. And the mother, to support the family, was having 3 jobs, and she worked from 6 in the morning until 11 at night, and she'll be barely at home. So the kids would be alone most of the day. So he used to stay at home with her younger sister, and he has to do his chores, and he was a very responsible boy, and everything was fine. But he started hearing those voices, and he started to be very afraid of being at home. So he moved to his grandma's house, and he was sleeping there and living there. So I started talking to him and saying that I was not so sure that the voices wanted to hurt him, because he seemed to be a very, very nice person. And sincerely, he looked to me as if he was the most sensitive person in the family, and they all said yes. Oh yeah. So I started talking about doctors, and specifically a doctor that I know in Brazil who listened to voices. And he listened to voices, and he gives prescription to people. So he contacts with these voices, and they advise him, and he gives the advice to people. So whenever he does that, he doesn't charge for his consultations, and he does that every week, one morning a week. And he owns the hospital. He is the owner of the hospital. And so I'm not sure if those voices really want to hurt him. Maybe he's just afraid of something that he doesn't know. And I said, I would like to talk to those voices. I would wish they would come here and we could talk a little bit. And he just looked with these eyes like this. He was so afraid. I said, no, I don't want them here. And I said, you know what? Maybe we don't know. And I told him about some other stories that would confirm his beliefs and confirm he was a good person, and bring the good, because in Brazil we have a lot of people who speaks to voices and spirits to treat other people. So I could bring that to the session. So I said that I gave them a task. And I said, you know what? Every day, so you're going to come back home, and your mom is going to help you in this. So she will arrive from work, and you both are going to pray together. And when you pray, you get stronger, and your mom is there. And then you're gonna ask an advice from the voices. And you're gonna wait for the advice and see what the voices has to tell you. With your mom there, they would not hurt you if they are willing to. And so after that, somehow he didn't hear voices anymore. The social relationships were changed. The mother, instead of not even seeing the boys and the children, she was there with him, supporting him, and so we gave them a better connection after that turmoil of divorce and everything. I changed the symbolic meaning of the voices. There was a transformation of their experience, so he was not feeling afraid anymore. He was feeling power. He was feeling that they were going to give him advice in that hard situation. So common factors of healing relationship in multicultural therapies is primarily the therapeutic relationship that we have, the bond that we share with the person. A shared worldview. I didn't tell him that, voices don't exist. I just shared that worldview with him and brought a better understanding, a better frame to see that worldview. The client expectations, they had a very good expectations because, with my former client, we had a very good connection in therapy, and rituals or interventions. So the rituals and interventions that based on the shared worldview were successful. I have another example that I like very much, and was a woman that I was seeing for depression and other things, but as in a certain part of her therapeutic process, she started talking about an abortion that she had 10 years before. And she said that that was part of her depression, that she could never forgive herself because of the abortion. And this is something that she had to live with it, and she could never do anything in therapy about it. And I said, I'm not sure that we cannot do anything about it here in therapy. And I told her that we could address that in a ritual if that was okay with her, and I'm sure that would affect deeply how she would feel about it after the ritual. But there was a whole preparation for that, and I asked her if she was willing to do that. She said, oh yeah, of course. So first I said that she needed to name the baby. She needed to give a name to the baby. And after she gave a name to the baby, she would write letters for the baby, saying everything that she had in her heart about the baby, all the expectations and all the sadness and the guilt, and everything was related to that phase of her life, explain how it was. So she would write a letter, and she would do that every day, like 20 minutes a day. And after that, we did a small ceremony in the office where she would bring the letters, and we light a candle, and she would say his name and say a prayer, and we would put fire on the letters. And then I asked her to buy things for babies, so a whole set of things for a newborn baby. And she would go to the church. I know that she was a Catholic. She would go to the church and give it to poor people. One family or two families, depends on what you want to do. And the other part of it was that she would go to a mass, because in Catholic religion, you can ask a mass for people who died, who just deceased. So I asked her to go to the church and ask for the priest a mass for the deceased child that she had. And she would do that with the father of the baby. And that for her was very important, because the father of the relationship was very affected, because the father wanted her to do the abortion, so she did. So the relationship was very affected by that abortion 10 years ago. And she said it was very important for her to do the mass and go there with the father. So after that, she felt that she had a great relief, and she felt really different from what she used to be, and she felt that she could forgive herself after that. So I have some more piece of here thing to tell you. Just one more thing that I would like to say to you, and this is a distinction that I found in this book from Houston Smith, who is a religion teacher in California, Berkeley nowadays, and he had a show on TV about religion, and he's very famous in this regard. But he, in this book, Why Religion Matters, he has these spiritual personality types that I thought was interesting. And he said that there are important religious differences between religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and other ones. But there is a deeper set of differences that cuts across these religions, is that how people relate to spirituality and religion, because they can call themselves, for instance, culturally Jewish. I'm recognized as culturally Jewish, but I'm atheist. I believe that there is no God. So, or sometimes we think in a tribe everybody will be polytheist, or they will share the common view of religious worldview. But we always find an atheist in any community that we go. So they believe that there is no God. So modernity has given a bad name to religion, and moved virtues from the theist to the atheist side. So Freud would say that religion is projection of our neurotic needs and conflicts, and needs for a big father and this kind of things. So atheist they would believe so the physical universe, they believe in a physical universe that's conceived by science and common sense, and that's what exists. And of course there are subject experiences of biological organisms. And again, let me just say one thing. We will have everything inside of us in different graduations. And we can identify ourselves in as a monotheist or a mystic or a polytheist. But in different situations, one pattern will show more than the other. But we will have everything inside ourselves. The other one is polytheist. There are many gods. And so the polytheists, they believe everything that the atheists believe, but they add spirits to it. So they believe that there are spirits and we are affected by them. Our lives are affected by them. So they find ways of practically relate to them, or to make our lives better using their influence. The spirits are not necessarily good. I said in some Chinese cities, the evil spirits predominate, and they use those charms in front of the houses to get rid of the evil spirits. But if we see in our life, right, the fairy tooth, the fairy tooth, the tooth fairy, the tooth fairy. So we teach our children to put the tooth in, under the pillow, and then we put money for them in exchange for the tooth. So we teach them that there are spirits and that we can relate to them, and then they can manifest, and we have a practical result from that. I was arriving in Vancouver airport yesterday night, and I saw beautiful falls, and when I looked down, there was a lot of coins on the floor. I didn't have one coin at the time, but when I went in Rome and I saw those fountains, I did throw a coin and I made a wish, as I do when I blow a candle in my birthday. So this is the same mentality that is part of us. Monotheist, there is one God. So the monotheists obviously do not discount the polytheist spirits. They only baptize them, converting them into angels and demons. They give names to them. And the monotheist God is more personable and knowable, and we give God the qualities that humans have, but in a more elevated degree, like wisdom, mercy, compassion, creativity, love, and glory. And love is special quality among them. Those. So when we talk to God, like talking to a friend, this is the personal God. And I say, oh God, this is what happened to me. I don't know what to do, but I put those problems in your hands, and I hope that you help me. And I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. So this is a closer, more personal God that is just next to me. But again, I'm relating to a bigger and a higher level of my existence. The mystics, they believe that there is only God. So the duality between evil and good that existed in polytheist and a monotheist, that doesn't exist here in the mystic, for the mystics. Because everything is a God's creation. God is in everywhere. And everything is a way of God showing mercy, and for us to understand better ourselves and life. And for mystics, the world is like a symphony. If you hear each instrument being played separate, is very different from hearing the whole orchestra. And the orchestra is much more than only the sum of the parts. And how they are orchestrated and organize themselves. It's just a whole magic that is around it, and we are part of it. So in this sense, there is not good and wrong and bad, and it's just part of that symphony that God plays, and we are part of it. So he puts a very interesting that I put here. I put Houston Smith put a very interesting example that I put here. He says, if a 2-year-old drops an ice cream on the floor, he can feel as if it is a catastrophe. The mother knows that it's not and has a better understanding because she's more mature. But, and he says, can be an understanding of life so great that in its immensity, that in comparison to it, if the most horrible experiences seems to be ice cream drops. So Dr. Frankl seems to have this mentality in him. He went through the Holocaust, and he could get a lot of lessons and from that experience he had, and create a huge approach that has influences in so many lives nowadays. So he had a bigger purpose and meaning in his life. All right, 5 minutes off. Is there any questions or any comments? And I'm sorry that I just ran through it, everything, but I wanted to give as much as I could for this workshop.
How do you negotiate differences of, like for instance, within any group, there are differences that you mentioned, right? So someone within a polytheistic community or culture constructs it uniquely for themselves that may contradict at times within that whole area. So they may be, so if I'm seeing a Latino client, I can't assume that the Latino client
my primary influence was the Ericksonian approach and the mentality of utilization. So I try to understand how is the world view of the person, and I would try, instead of confronting it, I would accept, and I would utilize somehow, trying to change it. So I would accept, okay, you hear voices, but there are other people who hear voices and they're not, so this is and then I accept it and then I change a little bit. So this is the notion that I always had in my mind. It is Ericksonian. About the other topic that you brought about how do I know what is the meaning of spirituality and religion for a Latino, for instance, because there are so many factors. So we ask, what do you believe? So what do you believe that caused the problem, and what do you believe that can solve it? And sometimes I would as I said, I would bring things that if I see that person is polytheist sometimes, and that is bringing some problems, sometimes I bring something from the monotheist, from the upper, another level that can solve that. So I would say sometimes we get a little stuck in rituals and things, but we know that there is only one God and many ways to reach Him. So I would bring other values, higher values that can encompass that and could help the person to solve those problems. So we were in Taiwan last week, and there was this guy who had a problem with his he's a school teacher, and there was a director of the school that was very authoritarian and very put down. So he was having a lot of trouble with her, and there was many interventions that we did, but there was a point I said, you know, you cannot change. We have to have a stand on how we handle people's, human evil. Human evil cannot change who we are. So if I believe in respecting people, if I believe in treating them with respect, we should not let people's, human evil to contaminate us. So we have to have, whenever we face human evil, we should just face that and keep our values, which is I would respect people, I would love them or appreciate them for what they are, and not let them contaminate us. That is a spiritual value and that I hold. And that moment was useful for his therapy. So I would bring those values, and they are very effective sometimes. I don't know if there was a lot of things in your question. I don't know if I addressed everything.
I'm not sure if this can be dealt with quickly. Your example with the little boy was an excellent example of reframing within the cultural context.
Because there would be the same mentality of utilization in the back of my mind. So if the person listen to voices, let's talk to them, and let's listen to them and talk to them. And the only difference is that I have to deal with that more concretely and have another approaches to see where the the family system and how the symptom will be there. And of course I would refer the patient to a psychiatrist. I'm not in a mentality of either or. I'm a mentality of both and. So if I think, a psychiatrist and psychotherapy and even a curandero that we have in Brazil would help, I would bring them everything on to help in the treatment. So in a schizophrenic, I would not be. I don't know if I would use the same intervention, because I would try to create one intervention for each client, but would not be different. I would treat the voices as real, and I would try to contact with them and reframe them somehow, and transform the evil voices and good voices. Try to lower the evil and bring some good voices inside the person's head. Okay. Oh, I love this topic, and I think it's fascinating. And so I will have your information, and I will send you some. I can send it even my PowerPoint and some other internet websites that you can go and make more research on those issues. Thank you very much, and I hope that you got something from here. Thank you.